Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good everything else. I hope all of you are well wherever you're joining from. Before I get started, I would like to let you all know that we have simultaneous interpretation into English and French. So for those of you who don't know, although many of us know already from COVID times, please click on the globe icon in the lower part of your Zoom window and select a language. Let me introduce myself. My name is Natalie Campbell, and I'm the Regional Customary Tenure and Gender Advisor for the Mekong Region Land Governance Project. And it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar, Multi-Stakeholder Platforms for Land Policy Reform. What have we learned? It's very nice to see many of you participants, some familiar faces online. So today's webinar is co-hosted by the Land Portal Foundation and the Mekong Region Land Governance Project, or MRLG, as we'll be referring to it as. We're very pleased to bring together our very well-established and experienced colleagues from across the Mekong region, Africa, and around the world for this very important conversation and a very timely conversation as well. Across Africa, Latin America, Asia, multi-stakeholder platforms, or MSPs, as we'll be using that acronym this session, have become essential mechanisms for shaping land policies and land reform. These platforms bring together civil society, government actors, farmer organizations, private sector, academia, importantly, local communities, and development partners to analyze challenges, negotiate priorities, and ideally co-create pathways forward for a more just and effective land governance. They help manage issues and tensions, improve communication and alignment, and build political support needed for reforms that are both durable and equitable, and hopefully also meaningful. MRLG is a project that has been supported by the government of Switzerland through SDC, with co-financing from Germany and Luxembourg. And MRLG has been working on multi-stakeholder platforms since 2014 to strengthen the tenure security of smallholder farmers throughout the Mekong region. At the same time, global initiatives such as the Food and Agriculture Organization at the UN, FAO, the International Land Coalition, the ILC, the Comité Technique Français Développement, sorry for the pronunciation, and Land for Life program have gained substantial experience supporting multi-stakeholder platforms across West Africa, East Africa, and Asia, and of course also Latin America for some of our partners involved. From 2024 to 2025, MRLG has partnered with 3 of these programs in a joint learning initiative, resulting in a comparative analysis of multi-stakeholder platforms and their experiences across 5 countries, namely Mali, Guinea, Malawi, Cambodia, and Laos. Lessons from 5 country case studies, which you'll find the barcodes here, or the QR codes, they were synthesized in a collaborative capitalization of experience report. That study provides valuable insights, but today's purpose of the webinar is really to open this up to a broader dialogue for a more practice-oriented space, taking the discourse to the ground, hearing from the people, most importantly, who are part of and implementing these multi-stakeholder platforms, to unpack how these platforms can contribute to land policy reform, what makes them successful, what are the challenges, and how they evolve under different political and institutional conditions. Essentially, we want to unpack the value of MSPs, but also unpack their complexities. Before we start with questions, I have a few logistical notes about the webinar to share. This webinar is being streamed on multiple platforms, so if you do have to leave us early, we're sorry about that, but you can happily go back and watch this on YouTube and LinkedIn, and I believe potentially some other platforms as well. If you have any questions throughout the sessions, and we really hope you do, good ones, of course, all questions are good ones, but please really try and sink your teeth into our questions, into our content. We really want to hear from you. Please post them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That will make it easier for me as the moderator to ask our partners the questions instead of in the chat. And of course, we'll try and answer as many as possible. You will all receive the link to the video after this recording, so thank you for participating. And finally, there will also be an article with key messages about the webinar that will be made available on both the Land Portal and MRLG websites, so please keep your eye out for that. So without further ado, let me start our discussions with Christian Casselnet. Christian is an agronomist and an ecologist. He's working with GRET on rural development and natural resource management across various countries, including Brazil, West Africa, and Southeast Asia. He has been the deputy team leader of MRLG since during phase one, from 2014 to 2018. He's a colleague of mine, and I'm very happy that he will be the first one introducing the webinar today. He is also the author of the comparative analysis, which was shared on the screen earlier. So, Christian, my first question is, what are multi-stakeholder platforms? It's a term we're going to hear for the entire webinar. So let's get people a little bit familiar with what the term is, multi-stakeholder platforms. How are they diverse? Why did people start thinking about multi-stakeholder platforms, or at least naming them as multi-stakeholder platforms? Over to you, Christian.
English. Sorry, thank you, Natalie. In terms of land governance, this concept is part of the recommendations made by the governance of the voluntary guidelines for the land tenure management and natural resources management. It precise that it was recommended to create those platforms to support the reform policies that would take into account those guidelines, support follow up in the company. Some platforms had been existing before 2012, for instance, in Malawi, which is going to be represented today. They had a platform called Landlet that was existing, that was created in the 90s. So they didn't wait for these guidelines to create those platforms. But the platforms that are recommended in the voluntary guidelines are platforms that integrate, that involve all the stakeholders and particularly the government. So when we undertook our study in comparative reflection with other major programs that are present here, we noted that there was a diversity of platforms that were existing, and it is particularly related to the interest or the behavior of the government. In countries where the government is very open to the dialogue, to reforms, the platforms are made under the form of are also very open platforms, and they try to get all the stakeholders involved in it, including including the research sector, the private sector, and this platform work is based on common reflection, dialogue, of recommendations, and they try to work together with the government. As a relevant example, I can quote Guinea, where the multi-stakeholder land platform is chaired by two ministries alternatively, and the co-presidency is ensured by the former confederation, and NGOs are also involved in it. And technical and financial partners like the FAO. But not all governments are open to this type of dialogue, be it because, or be it for cultural and political reasons, or for any other reason. And in those countries, the platforms are more restrained, more focused, and they tend to be working on technical aspects, very specific technical aspects, and they try to put together recommendations that are acceptable by the government. That is the case for the alliances that were supported by the MSP, because in each country there are two different coalitions, two different alliances, one that is focused on the custom right and the other one that is focused on the responsible ecologic investment. Ecological investment. So those form of map of organizations that decide to work together and that have a common philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. And again, apologies for pushing for a speedy turnaround, but we do have lots of panelists that we'd like to hear from. So thank you very much, Christian, for that background. I think what's very interesting is you reflecting on sort of typologies of what multi-stakeholder platforms are, what are the enabling conditions, and how they can take different forms. This is something that many of our panelists will be picking back up on. So thank you very much for setting the scene, Christian. Now, let me introduce our next speaker, Amel Benkala. Amel is the project manager at GRET and has been working for over 15 years in collaboration with the Western African civil society organizations and national and international research centers. Since 2012, she's been involved with facilitating the Technical Committee on Land Tenure and Development, a think tank on land governance supported by AFD, the French Development Agency. The committee generally aims to generate knowledge and stimulate debate in order to promote multi-stakeholder dialogues in the process of developing and implementing land policies. Amel has also been partnered with us in this process of reflecting on MSPs that we've been doing. So, Amel, you have lots of great experience. My question for you is, why were some of these platforms created? And what are the different stakeholders? What types of stakeholders were involved? What does that look like? Over to you, Amel.
As you said, 30 years ago, the platforms that were created did not include all the requirements. They did not take it into consideration. And in this regard, we tried to support the action plan. As we said, the program are very different. We help them. We can find those platforms within the civil society organization, with the traditional ruler in the private sector, and according to us, it was very fruitful to support in this platform, in this network, the dialogue between the research sector, the civil society, and the government services, because it allows to give those platforms credibility and to support the creation of knowledge while supporting studies with great stakes in the country. So we create dialogue spaces at the national level, and we noted that those approaches were really bearing fruit um, for those governments to have to grant legitimacy and credibility so that they could entertain a long-lasting dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aman. Yes, it's really critical we look at within the diversity of the typologies of multi-stakeholder platforms. We also have such a diversity of actors and different expertise and positions, right? So we're always talking about furthering and getting deeper into the complexities of multi-stakeholder platforms, which is why each look different, each have different results, and ultimately serve different purposes. Thank you very much, Aman. Now let's shift a bit to our country cases. We have three examples or three folks who will talk about examples from different countries, from Cambodia, Malawi, and Sierra Leone. So let me start with Cambodia. Sok Sabai, Tol Sochia, thank you very much for joining us. Sochia is the Deputy Director of RECOF TC, the Center for People and Forests in Cambodia. He has over 20 years of experience in natural resource management, especially working with community forest management, protected areas and community protected areas, indigenous peoples, and local communities. His work involves both the implementation on the ground, helping communities secure land and resource rights, supporting sustainable forestry practices, and promoting gender equality, and also engaging in policy developments, including forestry reform, community forestry legislation, and participatory forest monitoring systems. So Chia, please tell us about Cambodia and the multi-stakeholder platforms you are involved in Cambodia. Over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. So, again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. So, as we all know that multi-stakeholder platform, there are a few in Cambodia, but I like to pick ones to share with you that called Alliance for Recognition of Customary Tenures in Cambodia. So I think the customary tenures, I like to stress, this is land and forested land customary tenure. So that is the coalition of civil society organization coming together, working to promote equitable land and natural resource management in the countries, and mainly on how to promote the recognition of customary land tenures rights of the local community. And I think and then the Lion was formed, I think was initiated in 2018, I think appearingly under the framework of Mekong Regional Land Governance Project. And I think the member of the alliance there was 8 organizations coming from different capacity. I think international organization, conservation organization like Wildlife Conservation Society, Conservation Internationals, and RECOF, where I come from, I think, and the local NGO who coordinate the network of civil society in Cambodia, for instance, NGO Forum and the grassroots indigenous organization like Highlander Association and Indigenous People Organization of Cambodia as well, I think. And this brings together a diverse capacity from the networking, from the technical skill, and from the grassroots perspective to work together as a group, I think. And there was 2 main focus when we start. One is to actually promote the free, prior, and informed consent principle in planning, decision making, and implementation concerning natural resource governance in the protected area context in Cambodia. I think through introducing the tool for participatory research use mappings and putting the tool into application on the ground and documenting experience and sharing widely, and then coming back with the experience, with the learning for our work on policies, advocacy, policy process, where we hopefully to use the learning from the experience to communicate our recommendation through policy development process. In Cambodia, for instance, the development of Cambodia environmental and natural resource codes, and lately the ministry guideline on community protected areas establishment, I think. I think this is short about the alliance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sochia. You gave a great kickoff for us to see in a bit more depth what a country MSP will look like, and I'm sure these will take different different iterations for our different panelists. Now, quickly, just a more logistical word for our panelists. I know it's difficult. If you could speak a bit more slowly for our interpreters, I think they would appreciate it as we have much to discuss, and we hope that everyone stays on the same page and who is listening in. So thank you very much again, Sochia. Let's turn to Sierra Leone. Welcome to Abu Bakar Sabai Fore Musa, who is the Commissioner General of Sierra Leone's National Land Commission, where he leads the country's landmark transition towards an integrative, transparent, and decentralized land governance system under the 2022 land laws. He oversees the Commission's core functions, from land registration and dispute resolution to the development of the national cadastre, while driving digital transformation through partnerships, including with the World Bank, such as the World Bank-funded Sierra Leone Land Administration Project. He is a reform-minded leader with a background in GIS and public sector modernization. Mr. Fore Musa champions people-centered, evidence-based land governance across Sierra Leone and the wider region. We are very happy to have you today. Could you please tell us more about the multi-stakeholder platform on land governance in Sierra Leone from your perspective as a government official? Over to you, Abu Bakr. Are you with us online? We saw you earlier. Okay. Well, hopefully he will come back and join us later. So why don't we move forward and let's move towards, we have on the line, we have Kate with us who is here. Excellent. So Kate Chibwana Nikata is the national facilitator for the multi-stakeholder platform on land governance in Malawi. She is an agricultural economist with over 8 years of experience advocating for responsible and inclusive land governance processes. She is a fellow under the Network of Excellence on Land Governance in Africa since 2018 and the University of Utrecht Land Academy since 2020. She co-chairs the platform on large-scale land-based investments in Malawi, together with the Malawi Confederation of Chamber and Commerce and Industry. She's co-authored several studies, of recent being an analytical look at the contribution of multi-stakeholder platforms in contributing to people-centered land governance in Malawi under the MRLG capitalization initiative. So thank you very much for joining, Kate. We're excited to hear from you. Can you give us a bit of insight about the multi-stakeholder platform in Malawi? And would you be able to focus a bit on the successes and lessons learned in an environment where the government is willing to come to the table? Over to you, Kate.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. The multi-stakeholder platform in Malawi was established in 2014. During this time, there was a lot of protracted debate around our land laws, then land bills. A lot of the issues surrounding this bill was the issue of unconsolidated and divergent views that were delaying the enactment of these laws during that time period. So it was at this time that the ILC and other civil society organizations in the country came together and thought that maybe if there was a coordinating body for the civil society to input into the land reform process as one, they would appear more coordinated and make more headway at that during this time period. It's also worth noting that as much as we have a cordial relationship now with the Ministry of Lands, during that time, the relationship was very adversarial and also affected this process of inputting into the land reform. So the MSP now became a stage, a neutral ground for bringing the civil society and the government officials to the table to come up with one bill that could later be enacted into parliament. The successes and the lessons that we learned, first of all, we saw that for a bill that had stored from 2013, from 2006, after the establishment of the MSP, we saw a fast track process, and in 2016, the bills were enacted. There was widespread awareness of the bills during that period as well, and also the beginning of a collaborative relationship whereby the first pilot of the land bills was an effort that was championed by government and also the civil society together. What we've learned among the many lessons that we've learned during this process, first of all, is to always keep the space open. The engagement is important, especially also when it comes to defining the relationship. Past advocating for passing of land laws and land reform, and now into implementation. How do we keep this space open so that we continue to advance the spirit behind the laws that we were advocating for, that we were advocating for the enactment back then? I think as a beginning, let me stop there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kate. Yeah, it's a very interesting to hear your experience, especially when the impetus for a multi-stakeholder platform is coming by the ministry, but also in a time of sensitivity. I think something that we might hear throughout the session today is the neutral ground, the fact that a multi-stakeholder platform could provide that space for sort of neutral discussions, where all of the various power dynamics might be lessened, and there might be a space for frank and meaningful conversation. Before I move back to Mr. Foy Musa, who has joined us again, I'd like to just hear quickly from Sochia, slightly about how the multi-stakeholder platform in Cambodia managed without having too much investment and coordination from the government. Maybe if you could give just a 2-minute response to what Kate shared, an example from Cambodia as well.
Well, I think quickly, I think the alliance was a group of like-minded civil society organizations who come together working to pursue the same common goal. I think 2 things I was mentioned is to try to make sure that the process on the ground, the practice part is in respect of free, prior, and informed consent, inclusive process, and also trying to inform the policies development. So at certain level that we can do in Cambodia. So I think that, but there is a secretary support from the Mekong land regional land governance for fortunately, I think, throughout the period that we have. So that's level.
Okay, thank you, Sochia. Yeah, the interesting case in Cambodia is also the fact that there are the like-minded civil society organizations that are coming together as an alternative and a sort of parallel platform to complement or assist, or also engage with the government, but not necessarily directly with the government as part of the multi-stakeholder platform. So thank you very much. I see that Abubakar Sape Foy Musa has joined us. Welcome back. We will turn to you. Could you tell us a bit more about multi-stakeholder platforms in Sierra Leone from your perspective as a government official? Welcome, and the mic is passed to you. I believe we are having some problems. Please go ahead.
I think his microphone is not appearing. I think he has an issue with his microphone. Maybe you can leave and rejoin. Apologies.
Okay. Apologies for that. Why don't we let Abu Bakr come back and hopefully find his a better connection or have some better luck with our mic. Um, in the meantime, why don't we move on and introduce our final part of the panel? Actually, Abu Bakr, sorry, I see you're on video now. Does that mean your connection is a good one? Why don't we give it a bit of a test? Apologies. Excellent. Okay, please then, after you. Round two. Sorry, apologies to interrupt. Abu Bakr, if you could turn off your video, it, it might be better for the connection. Thank you very much, Abu Bakr. I'm not sure if we're having connection issues again. Okay, well, while you are working on your connection, um, I might suggest that for the moment, we move forward to. Oh, hi, Abu Bakr. It seems that your connection isn't very stable. And maybe at the moment, I think we can move to Inge because potentially you don't have such a stable connection. And let's loop back around to you. Please indicate to me when you are having a better connection. Thank you very much. It's very interesting always and to hear from a government perspective, especially when that government perspective is so inclusive. And mentioning the fact that this is a really necessary platform to impact sort of policy, but also to ensure that policy commitments are being implemented meaningfully. And of course, as you know, one hat of mine is a gender advisor, and I'm very happy to hear you also talk about inclusion and the critical inclusion of women in these platforms. So thank you very much, and I hope that you are able to find a better connection. We're looking forward to hearing you later on as well. So let us move to our now final panelists for an international perspective. We have Ingeborg Gade, who is a land tenure officer at FAO. She is the FAO Land Tenure Team focal point for support to land policy reform and coordinates the team's overall support to sub-Saharan Africa. Before joining FAO 10 years ago, she did her PhD on rural actors and their participation in policy spaces. And she's supported multi-stakeholder processes on land in more than 25 countries. So thank you very much, Ingeborg. You have a lot of experience in this space. We're very excited to hear from you. So from your perspective, can you please tell us a bit about your experience in engaging in multi-stakeholder platforms and some of your thoughts? I know that you have lots to share. So over to you. Sorry, Inge. Could you speak a little bit slower for our interpreters? Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ingeborg. Yes, that there's a lot in your comments that reflect our other panelists as well, what they're mentioning. You talked about legitimacy and trust, neutrality, and how multi-stakeholder platforms can really be key in continuity. And I think what you're touching on is something that's very interesting, which is sort of the governments that the governments must be in the driver's seat. And I think that there are shared perspectives on that in terms of the effectiveness of a multi-stakeholder platform. Briefly, our experience in Laos working on customary tenure has certainly seen that with various subsector working groups on land and forests, the buy-in from various different government departments and ministries, including specific champions, has really been able to, let's say, put our objective of increasing customary tenure recognition on a sort of fast track and is endorsing that, right? You have that stamp. But I think also in many ways, and potentially Sochia will touch on this later, that there is a space also and a value in having those alternative platforms, which are not necessarily government-led, but also full of development partners, reform actors, the like, which are non-government. So thank you for that. A lot of food for thought, and I think a very good point to pivot to our next speaker. So let me turn back to Christian. Christian, you've had a lot of experience in multi-stakeholder platforms, as we discussed earlier. So how successful have they been in land policy advocacy and reform? And beyond land reform and policy change, what are the changes that multi-stakeholder platforms can enable and the value there? So please, Christian, a very simple question. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to be quick. With regard to the impact and success, we can say that the impact is not continuous. During some period, the club is working with the government and nothing happens. And out of the blue or for any reason, there is a change in the political momentum and it generates results. I can quote the example of the forest tenure reform in Laos, where a work was undertook, an advocacy work was undertook during 4 years before bearing fruit. The government was not open to a multi-stakeholder platform with the civil society. However, the efforts that were made, particularly by the Alliance for the Community Forest in Laos, that included some ministerial partners, allowed the bill to pass a few months ago, and it is going to generate a major change for millions of farmers located in areas considered as forests, mainly populated by ethnic minorities. What I mean to say here is the success or the results of the platforms are not conferred to the political will, because most of the time, even when there is a change in the policies, it takes time to implement those new policies. And in this regard, the platform can play a crucial role. For instance, in Mali, the platform is really meaningful in the support of one of the reform mechanisms that had been adopted many years ago, but that was never implemented on the field. Same applies in Malawi. And for the last point, the impact of the platform, we should not neglect the impact of those platforms in terms of capacity building, not only of the members of the platforms, but also on the long run, but also of the technicians, of the civil servant, and even the politicians that are champions and that can advocate for the reform, but that are a minority. So the work with the platform allowed them to build their arguments and to strengthen their political approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christiane. Yes, I think some very interesting thoughts, especially around reframing sort of public discourse and the key role of capacity. Having had worked on multi-stakeholder platforms myself for over 12 years, capacity building is not by any means an easy feat, but it is something that needs to be sustained over time. And with these multi-stakeholder platforms, there is an opportunity also to sort of shed light and put a spotlight on building that capacity. And so that also, we can come back to that a little bit later in terms of financial costs and sustainability and that need for capacity to be sustained also over time, as I see some questions. But I will move over to Amel on that note. Again, sort of with your experience, very in-depth experience over a range of countries, what successes have multi-stakeholder platforms achieved beyond policy changes and changes in legislation and policy? So please, over to you, Amel.
Thank you, Natalie. I'd like to insist again on the fact that the work we do in the platform change in a significant way the way actors interact. And it's a change that is going to be, that we are going to insist on, because without those platforms, this change was inevitable. In Guinea, for instance, it's really the platform that to create dialogue mechanisms between ministries, and those platforms allow ministries to engage in a common way in this work. So the creation of those platforms played a crucial role to commit the stakeholders in this common dynamic, common collaborative dynamic. Also, those platforms are really important to convey information on the traditional customs related to land tenure. Sometimes it's really difficult to explain the legal documents that support the implementation of land tenure policies, and those platforms to decomplexify of this and to make progress in this regard. Also, regarding the collaboration with farmer organizations, the mechanisms of land tenure management have been discussed at the national level, and we created a consensus on the need to acknowledge those local and the tenure rights, and he also to include in the reform mechanism that would be accessible to all actors in the rural world. So it's also very important to shape the way people perceive the priorities. Also, I'd like to mention that in countries where firms are not undertaken, and there are many of them, for instance, in Senegal, the role of the platform is really crucial to feed the conversations, because the political process have been stopped on the field. Some projects can be implemented at large scale, and those land reforms are being implemented bottom up, and also the role played by the civil society is really important, so that we can keep putting those issues in the agenda and to keep making proposals to support the interests of the larger number of people.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amel. Yeah, really very, very interesting insights. I think something that's quite interesting that you touched on a bit was this sort of interface to improve, overlapping mandates and different government authorities and to strengthen the collaboration between the various different reform actors, and using multi-stakeholder platforms sometimes as a tool to also improve efficiency in many ways in that respect, and communication and synergy. So thank you very much for that. Now I would like to move on to a sort of cohort of country experiences, and I will move to Sochia. So Sochia, I'll ask you the same question. In the experience of the MRLG Customary Tenure Alliance multi-stakeholder platform, how has the alliance, the platform been successful or not in land policy reform? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. So I think I like to bring the plus side and the minus side. I don't think we can say we are successful, but there are some results that we can reflect upon the process, upon years of implementation. I think one thing, as I mentioned earlier, that the Lion was purely civil society organization, no government representative. So one thing is that it offers space for different organizations, for different alliance members to come constructively discuss, identify the root cause, and have a lot of discussions on the issue, I believe, because land and natural resource management issue in Cambodia sometimes politically sensitive, and especially when we touch upon the land issue and about the human right issue, it's sometimes politicized when people are talking about that, and especially in the context of conflict, in the context of overlap claim between communities, customary 10 years rights and private large-scale private company, and especially when we touch upon the ineffectiveness of conservation, which is the mandate of government. So I think, at least I think in that sense, I think the Lion offers space. I think the space that's not only the meeting of the Lion member, but also the connection between different members together. When we have issue, we can discuss, and I think that that is the conversation that have ongoing among the Lion member. And I think the second thing is that we have the various capacity of member bring on the table, and I believe that allows us not only the discussion, the full discussion about the issue, but also something that we can bring up to the table when we speak to a certain government counterpart that back with the evidence from the implementation on the ground. I think in the case of our alliance, I think we have at least 3 of our members implement on the ground, on the practice side, implement the policies, measures on the ground, and we bring up the lesson learned from that implementation. I think that is 2 things that we feel that is a plus result. But I also like to bring a couple of not so good thing from us, is that in the context of Cambodia, I think the political system is very close. We understand that, and then a multi-stakeholder platform, and I think especially in the customary tenure, as I mentioned, it very easy to be politicized to other issues which the alliance member cannot speak quite openly, strictly in that sense. And also when we speak about the issue of customary tenures, I think like it or not, we have to fit that into the legal system, institutional system in the country, land, natural resource governance. So at least for ministries, government ministry encompass this issue. I think Ministry of Land Management, Ministry of Environment in Cambodia, Ministry of Forestry in Cambodia, Ministry of Rural Development in Cambodia, touch with indigenous people development. So in that sense, so when we speak about customary tenure issue, it's gonna cut across different sector, different ministries. So one single issue can cut across 4 or 5 ministries, cut across different legislation, different law, different guidelines. So that is a thing that we found a little bit difficult for us. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you very much, Sochia. Yes, absolutely. We complicate, I mean, life and land governance is complicated in and of itself, especially when communities practice customary tenure over territories that are beyond what, government categories of forest land or agricultural land is, right? It's a living mosaic of territories that are alive and change and shift. So that in and of itself is a challenge. But I am glad you spoke a bit about evidence-based advocacy, because that is something that has been, I know, very, very important and fundamental in the functioning of the stakeholder platform in Cambodia. At this stage, I'm very glad to see Abu Bakar on video, which means hopefully we have a good connection. If we don't have a good one, you can take off your video and potentially that will make it better. But let's move over to you. So Sochia was talking a bit about, and so were our other panelists, Amel and Christian, sort of how multi-stakeholder platforms can improve land policy and reform from their perspectives. But even more importantly, I think, is to hear also from you and to hear that other side of the story from government. So please, Abu Bakar, the floor is yours. Thank you so much, Abu Bakar. It's great to hear you, and we're very glad your connection is stable, because you've shared a lot of many very interesting things. I think something that struck out to me in your comments were this sort of need for continuity, as Inge mentioned before, and several others have mentioned as well, that these multi-stakeholder platforms can continue and cross these sectors, as Sochia was saying. But also what you were mentioning is, it's important for these platforms to remain sort of to take many different forms, to stay flexible and agile while also staying dedicated to the objective. So, multi-stakeholder platforms are complex and sometimes have a lot of participants, but at the same time, there's also sort of a policy objective and a need to shepherd the discussion forward, which can also be somehow very difficult if too participatory, right? If there are too many people and it becomes too difficult to hear the voices of everyone. So it's this delicate balance, how to maintain a delicate balance between flexibility and agility and participation and really having that meaningful participation for change on the ground. So thank you for that very, very inspiring, those very inspiring thoughts of seeing multi-stakeholder platforms as auxiliary to the functioning of the land committee. So on that note, I would like to go to Kate. And Kate, please, I would like to hear your reflections on the same question about the success of multi-stakeholder platforms.
Yeah, I think one key input I can bring into it for us, it has been that multi-stakeholder platforms have helped us to tackle some of the barriers that we had in terms of bringing about meaningful change. When we started discussing and dialoguing with government on the issue of having a new law brought into place, our main goal when we came to the table and put down the knives was to find out that we all had the same goal we all had the same goal at the end of it, is to ensure that the communities have access to secure tenure. How we did that was a bit different. So government was more focused on the technical side to say, let's do mapping, let's do this and this. But then because there was this space, we found out that as civil society, maybe our priorities were saying that, no, I mean, the mapping is okay, but also bringing issues of gender, of inclusion, of how culture will be influenced. Speaking of culture, we also had strong resistance from traditional leaders, some that were misinformed, some that were benefiting from the uncertainty of customary tenure at that time, who rose up and opposed the enactment of these laws. Now, if government tried to engage them, it did bear a lot of weight because they said you are the policyholder, you are supposed to support this. But in this space of the MSP, we were able to sit down, government and civil society, and say, how do we reach out to our traditional leaders and help them understand that this reform if taken from a positive light, it benefits the community, it benefits them. It's also in the same engagements that we're also able to sit down and map a way of how do we bring in the private sector as well. As a partner and not necessarily always as an adversary or and whatnot. So it has been very instrumental to have this space and to help us bridge gaps, bridge and break barriers that that could have been difficult for either one of us to tackle on ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kate. Yes, absolutely. I like the metaphor of coming to the table and putting down the knives, even if it's something else like an axe or a piece of grain. And how instrumental these platforms have been to make bridges and break barriers to talk about change. And I think your comments are very resonate very much with our other panelists in terms of, essentially the goal is there to improve land governance. It's how we get there and how multi-stakeholder platforms can be a vehicle to achieve that goal, even if, they're temporary and there's not continuity. So there's also value in that, in breaking those barriers and bridging those gaps. Inge, I will turn to you for a bit of a broader reflection on this same question. So, how successful have multi-stakeholder platforms been in land policy advocacy and reform? Over to you for your experience and your thoughts. Thank you very much, Ingeborg. Yeah, that very interesting examples from Cameroon and Chad. And I think what resonates with me is something that we've been thinking a lot about as our MRLG project is actually closing this year after 11 years of supporting multi-stakeholder platforms, is that idea of, consortium-led development and consortium-led support to different platforms, and how critical that is, and really thinking about pooled funding and joint programming and having these processes be much more collective and also inclusive. I think, when you talk about looking at pooled funding, it's about also highlighting and ensuring that the voices of various actors who might not necessarily be too loud in these platforms are also heard when creating these proposals, like local communities, marginalized communities, ethnic minorities, Indigenous peoples, and women. So there are always so many challenges, but I do think that what is really coming through very clearly here with this conversation is talking about this impact. It's the impact of multi-stakeholder platforms, whether or not that stakeholder platform improves policy on land governance is somehow secondary to the much broader and more important impacts that those multi-stakeholder platforms are having in the meantime in terms of shifting relationships, and having impact beyond that initial objective. So with that, let's do our final round of questions for the panelists today before we get to audience questions. Christian, as Inge has sort of led us nicely to this point, could you share a few key lessons you've learned from engaging in this experience, the CapEx, but also your experience as well? Over to you.
Sorry, I try to be as quick as possible. I would like to insist on three aspects. The first one has already been mentioned. The effort made with regard to the land reform, the platform needs support on the law, and the result identifiable after many years. Secondly, the necessity or the need for flexibility and access. The successful platform showed difficulties in adapting to the political change and the adaptation of the working areas based on the political priorities. I am not going to go into details here. And thirdly, the importance of something that was mentioned by the High Commissioner, that is the importance of the credibility. Platform has a value for the government, for they represent not only the stakeholders that are not only audible, but also because they are able to bring reliable information and data about what's happening on the field. So for me, one of the mechanisms that have proved to be very efficient, platforms should have relays that are sub-platforms at the regional and sub-regional level that are spaces for subject matter to be discussed in relation with the local authorities, so that the land tenure situation can be analyzed and represented before the national authority. Because in many cases, the central power or the government does not have a concrete idea of what's happening on the field. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christian. I know you have lots of insights on this. I appreciate keeping it short, but it was short and very sweet. And I think, again, coming back to this importance of credibility, flexibility, and also long-term financial support. So how do these pooled funding, these funding mechanisms, or these partners, development partners who are engaged with ensuring somehow their funding is going to supporting these platforms, how can they show value where there are impacts that are not measurable in a scale or in a nice sort of Excel table of monitoring and evaluation with numbers. And so that's really something that we discuss and we think about a lot also, is showing the value that's beyond policy change in multi-stakeholder platform, and the need for those policies and those processes to have long-term support. And maybe that's not an external form of support either. Maybe that's something that's internally, and maybe there's a system and mechanism that is incorporated within these multi-stakeholder platforms that can continue to provide support for them. So over to Amel. Maybe we can ask you some key lessons that you learned from these processes as well. Amel, please.
Thank you very much, Natalie. So to complete what has been said by Christian, I would like to talk about the quality of the inclusiveness of the platforms, and show that in many countries, the platforms create frameworks that are legitimate, meaningful, and adapted to undertake inclusive consultation processes on land tenure and on other subject matters related to rural development. And it is really important to mention because the actors are involved and take advantage of this to make progress on other platforms. Guinea, for instance, created a regional consultation platform that is feeding the processes at the regional level, and regional actors are involved in those platforms. These are major progress and significant lessons learned that we can benefit in the future. And still on the articulation of this case, we talked about political processes undertaken at the national level, but we can also say that the platforms are involved on major dynamics at the level of economic regional communities. In West Africa, platforms were mobilized to conduct or to support consultation processes and to feed a major forum that was on the sub-regional level. So the inputs were really relevant. And all of that progress made, lesson learned, and it proved that the platform, those platforms have broadened the scope at different scales. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amel. Because we have 10 minutes left, I would actually like to ask the remaining participants for this to be somewhat of a quick round. So, and for you all to share one key lesson. So, Suchia, I'll go to you. Could you please share one key lesson?
Okay, thank you, Natalie. So I think back to the customaries tenure recognition alliance. So surely civil society organization. So I think one lesson that we learn is that it not always bad, but also creative space, but allow us to have a kind of, I call it, adaptive way of communicating our point to the government. We have different government. So the point is that we have different members. So some of the member may be respected by the government, where other member may have different way of respected. For example, here, RECOF may be more closely with the municipal environment. We have the formal collaboration with the ministries. We have one of our board of trustees from the ministry. So any communicating point from us on behalf of the alliance would be more effective with the municipal environment. So I think whereas the NGO forum is the member of technical working group on land with the Ministry of Land Management, they might be in a well position of communicating our point. So the point is, okay, we have one common voice, but we have one message, but different way of communicating. So thank you, Nathan.
Thank you. Thank you, Sochia, for keeping it brief. Yeah, very, very important that there might be a multi-stakeholder platform that is an overarching objective, but there are also different modalities to implement those objectives and different actors within those platforms. And that's exactly why they have such value, right? To have those different voices and different channels and different levels of access. So thank you very much, Sochia. Over to you, Abu Bakar. If you could share one key lesson, we'd like to hear from you. Mm. Thank you. Thank you very much, Abu Bakar. Yeah, very, very interesting and very important to consider clarity on our roles and responsibilities, but also flexibility in terms of incorporating different actors within these platforms and their roles, but also at the same time while also trying to keep the door open for meaningful participation. So thank you very much. I will go over to Kate and then Inge. So Kate, please give one lesson learned, and then we'll go to Inge. So hopefully we have time for one question from the floor.
Yes, I think just to add on to what everybody has said is that as much as we invest in what the MSP is doing outside, it's also very significant and important to invest in the governing structures, the facilitation, and the internal mechanism that makes the MSP work. This is as much as important as we do outside, because if we don't strengthen the facilitation and the internal mechanism of the MSP, it won't be as effective in influencing what's out there as well. I think that would be my addition. Thank you.
Absolutely, Kate. Thank you very much. The importance of investment into the internal mechanisms and the coordination mechanism is indeed very, very critical. So Inge, over to you for a last panel reflection and one key lesson or challenge. Thank you. Thank you, Inga. Absolutely. I appreciate that call for more coordinated interventions by having, having better different definition around our roles and responsibilities. And I think that's a great moment to stop our dialogue and to have maybe a very quick answer. So thank you very much for all of you to contribute. We've had a lot of questions. I'm particularly interested by questions that are around financing and sustaining the financing. But I think one question that we've had a lot of is about inclusion. So how to ensure that these multi-stakeholder platforms can include both Indigenous peoples and local communities and also women. And I would like Kate, maybe if you could just give a very quick response to that. You mentioned that a bit earlier. So please, over to you, Kate, for a quick response.
Yeah, I think for us, what has helped us is a very thorough stakeholder mapping of all that we need to be involved in, and also investing in contextualized capacity building for example, women groups, indigenous communities who may not have the skills or the confidence to speak up in our platforms. Pairing them, mentorship programs with other organizations that are doing much more better so that they are given the extra push that they need to make sure that their issues are set across. You can even observe in an MSP that, for example, development partners, national civil society organizations don't need that much help in making their voice heard, but just specifically building the confidence and the capacity of the marginalized groups to be able to make their voice heard in these forums also bears a lot of fruit. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kate. I would love to get to some other really fantastic questions. Unfortunately, we have not enough time here. Maybe if I would just ask a sort of lightning round, all panelists to put on your cameras, maybe say just one word or one thought that you're coming away with from this panel. I will go to Christian first. Quickly, just something that comes to mind.
It's very impressive to see this experience accumulated at the international level, and I'm in agreement with it in Ingeborg that we need our initiatives need to be better articulated, and we also need to accept that the fact that they need support from the international community, a continuous support, and this doesn't necessarily mean very important sums of money, but we can't just simply say, okay, here there's an opportunity and we're going to invest, and then in other areas there's no will, so we're not going to do anything. So we need to put all the chances on our side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Okay, so Chia, maybe just something very brief. What's something that has inspired you or something that you'll leave this session with? And then I'll go to Inga, Amel, Kate, and Abu Bakr.
Yes, I think just one word from me is a multi-stakeholder platform should be adaptive. I think we see that in the case of Cambodia, there are a multi-stakeholder platform that will work only with the civil society. We are from the Africa. There is participation and respect from the government partners to value the voice from the multi-stakeholder platform member. We also hear the example of a beauty of having the one resource to pull together all the platform members, and we also have I also see the situation in Cambodia where all the members coming together with different resources from their own. There are strategic investment by Mekong regional land governance to fill the gap. But this is something that I will bring back with me, is being adaptive, both in the way we process as a multi-stakeholder platform and both in the way that we communicate with the government's stakeholder.
Thank you very much, Suchia. Okay, Kate.
Yeah, one takeaway for me is like viewing the MSPs not as projects, but for me, I would guess I would say as processes. So once you change that perspective, even the issues of sustainability and financing and how we carry this forward will be built in your programming, because you're not seeing this as something that has an end date, but it's a process that you want to sustain so that an agenda keeps featuring prominently in our nation's development agenda as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. And thank you for being so succinct. I believe in the order I mentioned Inga. So Inga, please. And then Amel. Thank you, Inga. I hope our translators got all of that. If not, I'm sure they got a little bit, but thank you. Amel, over to you, please.
I would like to reinforce the points linked on the quality of dialogues between individuals. And because we speak a lot about organizations, but it's actually women and men and women who walk who have a long trajectory, and so it's important to maintain this beyond different partnerships and institutions. And us as people who accompany, it's important to be reactive when there are opportunities that open. We need to be able to respond, and I think it's part of our responsibility to do this.
Thank you very much, Amel. And over to you, Abu Bakr, for the last reflection before we close. Unfortunately, Abu Bakr, it seems like your connection. Ah, oops, sorry. Thank you. Thank you all so very much for this extremely interesting conversation. I believe that we could have 3 or 4 more of these and still not be able to unpack everything that we would like to. But quickly from what I'm hearing, there's a lot where the panel collectively stands in terms of mobilizing financial support, coordinating mechanisms to ensure that financial support is sustainable, but also ensure that these coordination platforms remain relevant and continue to exist and fit the purpose of improving land governance and in policy and reform. What I'm also hearing a lot about has been the credibility, so establishing credibility through our government partners that we heard from Inga and Abu Bakr as well, but also from civil society and local communities communities, how that stays relevant and adaptive and flexible. It is a challenge, but luckily we've heard that there have been some really very good examples of multi-stakeholder platforms that exist. The key here is flexibility, the ability to be adaptable, but also the political will to continue to engage on those political in those political spaces. Something that resonates from me from the Mekong region, having seen over the 7 years that I've been engaging in the Mekong region, is political will and potentially a shift in the political will thanks to the existence of multi-stakeholder platforms. And these multi-stakeholder platforms, which I'm referring to, especially in Laos, for example, have taken various different forms, and therefore it seems to have led to an increase in political will to engage in these spaces. So there's very much hope, and I'd like to leave that on a hopeful note, while for us all to be also wary that these platforms need to be accountable, they need to be transparent, and most importantly, they need to be participatory, and they need to represent the people who actually steward and govern a lot of the world's land and territories, which are local communities, Indigenous peoples, and that women often remain the most vulnerable and excluded over these in these decision-making platforms. So we are hopefully moving towards a more informed political space about the power and challenges and opportunities of engaging in multi-stakeholder platforms. So a big virtual round of applause to all of our panelists, to all of you audience for sticking around past 10 minutes, past the closing time. It's really been wonderful to see so many very, very interesting questions that we haven't been able to answer. I would encourage you all to reach out to the panelists that you're interested in engaging with after the webinar. Their emails will also be available in the article that Land Portal will share, and so you can have their contact information. I will urge you to also take the survey that Neil has circulated in the chat, so that Land Webinar has some information from all of you. And thank you all again very much. Another thank you to our interpreters who have stayed very vigilant with all of our various interventions and conversations. So many thanks. Have a good day, a good evening, a good morning, and hope to see you all again here in another way. Thanks a lot, and thanks for being here.